Welcome to the Muju Business Podcast, where our goal is to provide as much value to entrepreneurs and business leaders as possible. I'm Dylan, this is Steve, and today's guest is a good friend of ours, Matt Bray. So Matt is an established commercial realtor who's handled over $1 million in transactions since 2017. Matt actually helped us out into our first commercial lease here in Westchester and has helped over 40 clients in the greater Philadelphia region. So thanks for coming on today, Matt.
Thanks for having me on. Back where it all started.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
As you
original.
noticed, when I came in, I had to take a quick nickel tour around.
Yeah, definitely.
The place. And I like it.
Perfect.
As most of the people recording this probably can't see, that mezzanine upstairs, that's the most coveted thing in flex space.
Really? Interesting.
Yes.
I didn't even know that. Yeah.
Well, they're difficult to put in.
Interesting.
When you consider, townships and just the process.
The zoning stuff.
And especially if landlords can get away with not incorporating that.
Yeah.
Then
they don't do it, right? Yeah.
So
cool.
Yes, the secret's out. The Muju boys have one of the best types and quality of flex spaces in the area. So.
Awesome. Well, we didn't even know. Finding out new stuff every day. So so we kind of have an idea, but give us a little idea of your backstory, kind of from before you got into commercial real estate and then leading up to it, and starting out and up to where you are now.
Sure. Yeah. So, as I think you mentioned, I technically got started and licensed in 2017. But before that, I went to Penn State, graduated in 2016, and it was actually with a science degree. So a little bit of more than a 180 to land in commercial real estate. So I get that question often. But what was interesting to me is I got a job as soon as I graduated from Penn State down in South Florida. Right. And now that's a podcast for another time. That's really there.
Yeah.
But as I was down there, you're ambitious. You're just getting out of college. You want to figure out how you're going to, achieve every goal you've ever set, right? That take over the world mindset. So as I'm down there, I'm networking, and I happen to be living near an affluent area in West Palm Beach. So the people that I was frequenting and being mentored by, I started to notice a commonality. And that link in the chain was commercial real estate. And what appealed to me wasn't, if I want to be successful and achieve X, Y, and Z, I need to be in commercial real estate. It appealed the type of people they were.
Interesting.
It was almost as if I was seeing myself in the future and said, same personality, maybe I'd be good at it. Let me just look into it.
Yeah.
Right? So as I'm working down there, I said, all right, I'll get my Florida license. It's not a crazy investment of time, right? As most people know, it's a test. Same for residential and commercial real estate. It's pretty straightforward. Not as much technical knowledge, more so, the terminology. And then as I went ahead and got that, I learned more about the dynamic of the business and where you plant your roots. You're not so much confined to, but I started to have to make a life decision. So I go ahead and I get the license. I have the job lined up with a brokerage, all these contacts in place. So I figured out what I wanted to do, but then I realized the where was just as important. And I was born and raised, right, Westchester, the same area, so it comes full circle. But I started to say, well, do I want to spend 4, 5, 10 years down here after this career change? So in short, figured out what I wanted to do, where I wanted to do it, and I didn't waste any time.
Yeah.
Before my lease even ended and I gave my notice, I was already taking the courses online for Pennsylvania, and I was reaching out to every single brokerage that I possibly could and just giving them my story, which, again, it's a 100% commission job, which I know we'll get into. But when someone approaches a brokerage to say, hey, this is what I want to do, it's exciting, right?
For sure.
So then it became about the right fit. And so, long story short, I moved back up, and I think this was before you guys were around. I could have used your help because I remember still having boxes to unpack, and I'm already taking my test to get licensed and in an office shadowing. So
that's awesome.
Didn't waste any time.
That's sweet. Yeah. And then so that was 2017, and then after that you were full in. You became an agent, or were you underneath somebody, or how did they structure it for you?
That's a good question, because there's a lot of debate around what it is we actually do, right? Because you hear the term realtor. It's not used very much in the commercial sense.
Yeah.
But it's the same thing in terms of the definition, but the day-to-day, the actual operation of it, that's where it starts to vary. So I got licensed, and as soon as I hung my license at a brokerage, which is SwopeLees, that's when, that exact moment, you're in business.
Right.
So, and I do want to shed some more light on why I chose a boutique firm, right, with SwopeLees. So Chuck Swope, obviously in the name SwopeLees, and I believe you've met him.
Yep, yeah. Great guy.
Chuck and Jim started it about 13 years ago, and they operate tri-state area, but mostly greater Philly. Similar to how I got into the business, what piqued my interest in Florida, the first conversation I had with Chuck was over breakfast, and I knew it was the right fit. Every other, and it's all about fit, right? It's not about, oh, this is better than this, right? Because people are going to have, it's about what's going to work for you, where you can provide the most value.
Do those values align with you?
Correct. And so to just shed light more on your question, a very common way in commercial is people start out as a market analyst, right? So they'll be at a larger firm, they'll be doing research and familiarizing themselves. It may be 3, 4, 5 years before they're out day to day, right? Kind of running the show, showing properties, handling clients. Whereas for me, I knew I wanted to get started immediately.
Yeah.
And that's why when we all met, that was, I think, 3 weeks after the point I'm talking about. So I learned by immersion. There was I mean, there was a ramp-up period for the sales cycle.
Yep.
But day one, it was prospecting, getting out there.
Burn the boats, take the island.
Exactly.
Sure. Yeah.
And that's just what worked for me. Some people are better with a book and in a classroom. I learned by doing. And it was helpful, for Chuck and I to sync up like that, right? We recognized that, okay, you got to cater to your strengths. So same intuition I was following landed me there. And looking back, I don't regret it, because it was those early days where I'm out there and I had all the resources and support, right? But still, if you do something wrong or make a mistake, my mantra is to just not make that again.
For sure.
Right. And it sticks in your brain. And again, as you continue to ramp up, I've noticed over time, as long as I continue to stay on those basics, then, here I am, almost 5 years in.
Yeah.
And like I said, I'm very happy with the way that I dove into it.
So is the reason why most people do the market analyst position first to just kind of get acclimated with real estate in general, and they have to basically learn how to prospect? Is that like the big differentiator? Like, obviously you want some market knowledge, but it's getting over that sales fear.
I wouldn't necessarily categorize it as sales fear, but that's basically spot on, where you're familiarizing yourself. The other part of it is those are with the larger firms where the deals may be a little bit differently structured. They may be more corporate, where they need a team and resources.
Got
right?
it.
Yeah.
So, picture if I'm working with you gentlemen and we're about to take over a large portfolio, right? So, and you're about to put that in a whole new asset class. You want to have that, the man in the chair, as they say, right?
Yeah.
That's getting all the information you need, and keeping, again, market research and the analyst. So it starts out as an extra set of hands. I've talked to people who have done it and they're thriving. But again, for them, they knew that was how they wanted to integrate into the business, especially if this job's a commitment,
Yeah.
100% commission. You want to make sure that you're doing something that you actually want to do in general, especially in commercial real estate.
Well, especially those deals, they don't happen right away. I mean, how long did it take you when you got your first deal? How long did it take from shaking hands, introducing yourself, to actually closing day?
No, that's a good question. The deal cycles generally 6 to 12 months, generally, specifically in commercial. But for this, as we know, you guys were my first deal, and that was a 3.5 month process. So I don't want to say I got lucky, but
we're just that good.
Yeah, you guys are just that good.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
You're the dream client,
Right.
And that doesn't grow on trees. And I do want to be a little more specific. It's less about this type of client and that type of client. I was just fortunate that it was in the immediate area that I was familiar with, right? Having grown up here and having someone to guide me along. But again, I'll take that and actually making money in the field over sitting in a classroom any day.
Right, for sure. Yeah. So, I mean, that's such a good insight into, kind of how you compare in terms of like basically you're an entrepreneur because like you said, you're all 100% commission based. You have to do everything yourself. How did you generate those leads early on? I mean, I know how we met, but
Right.
we weren't your only lead. How did you, what was your strategy when it's like, hey, I don't really have any experience. I wasn't a market analysis. You know what I mean? I don't
Right.
just have these corporate deals coming through. I got to go out and get it. What did you do? What were your strategies and mindset concepts that you focused on?
Yeah, it's a fun question because the job is to be anywhere and everywhere.
Right.
Yep.
So fortunately, I was given some great mentorship and advice, and it's about part of what drew me to the business in the first place, a lifestyle. So like you said, thinking of it more from an entrepreneurial standpoint than clocking in at a 9 to 5.
Yeah.
Right.
Huge difference.
Some days may be 8 to 8. Right. Some days you may be on the road and you're barely in the office. I love that no 2 days the same, right? But yeah, so for me, when it came to getting leads, it helped, again, that I was in the area that I was familiar with. So, step one was just letting everyone know what I do, right? Just being top of mind. Obviously, for the viewers and listeners, we met at the Chester County Chamber, and it was at the luncheon. It just so happened I made the group aware of what I did. Sure enough, you guys said, hey, we need your help with that. And, the rest is history. Here we are sitting in that very space.
Yeah.
But so, yeah, going to all your networking events, of course. I prefer, as you guys know, in person, right?
Yep.
But outside of that, that's where the sales aspect comes in,
Yeah,
right? Because
yeah,
you're
yeah.
making your cold calls, you're sending out your emails. I guess for me, how I tweaked the process was taking that mindset of, oh, this is a lifestyle, always having business cards on me. But I truly did enjoy like the act and the art of taking a growing business and helping them find the space to operate it and reach their goals, right? Like when I drive by this location, like that's the fulfillment for me.
Yeah.
So in doing that, it wasn't just, okay, during the working hours, I'm going to show up to people's businesses and ask if they need help. We could be out at a bar, right?
Yeah.
And just familiarizing yourself with the more entrepreneurial mindset. That's the fun part for me.
Yeah.
So I'd say aside from your textbook, again, cold calls, emails, your texting, your listservs, right? Going to networking events throughout the area. It was, and, getting out on social media, for me, it was just making sure that, again, in this being a lifestyle, I let people know what I do and how I can help them. And then that takes the salesy aspect out of it, right? You hear that term like the typical salesman. I don't try to stay away from that. Yeah, part of why I like the business is it's more natural, right? Like
It's genuine.
Right,
Yeah,
exactly.
Right.
And
you're
that's
actually
huge.
you. Like you're actually Matt Bray, and yeah, there's a transaction going on, but that's just that's how you actually would be anyway.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You have to. There's a level of professionalism, right? And there's a level of knowledge that I have to carry. But at the end of the day, people want to work with those that they enjoy spending time with. And when it's such a grueling process, having that communication and relationship is key. So I'd say, and again, it's ironic because there's not really a way to quantify it, but the majority of my early clients getting off the ground, they were relationship based, and they were all from, again, whether it wasn't meeting someone cold at an event, it could have been someone I grew up with, right? Reconnecting with them, and then their family member or their father or what have you. And from there, and I think we were talking before these came on about, the more time you get in, that's when renewals start to come up. So recurring clients or referrals, getting your name out there. Or, there's no better feeling than you send a cold email or a cold call 6 months, and then all of a sudden that seed you planted just pops up out of nowhere.
Yeah, right.
Absolutely.
If only
Yeah.
it could be so easy.
Yeah,
but
yeah, right, yeah.
It does happen every now and then.
Well, I was going to ask, so, because I was also a realtor, residential realtor
That's right.
for a while.
You get it, yeah.
Was not for me. But,
Right.
I mean, I think the main reason why it wasn't for me was because I looked at every person as being transactional. It was hard for me, and I was younger, and I was hungry, and I did want to hear people's needs and listen to them, but the back of my mind, and especially with follow-ups, I was just like, all right, what can I say to get them re-engaged? You know what I mean? So when you're nurturing your leads, how do you balance, or how would you give advice to someone to balance the salesiness to actually, genuine curiosity about how you can help them, if that makes sense?
What are you guys, 6 episodes in?
Yeah.
You're already experts on the question. I wish that question was tattooed on every single wall that I ever did business in. And the reason why is so much, the easy answer is communication, but for me and how I've been trained and what I've studied, so much is about the qualifying aspect. So if it's not a relationship like this where we know each other and, hey, look, it's easy to have a difficult conversation.
For sure.
Right? That paradox there.
Yep.
Let's say that that's not the case, right? It's having the communication up front. So it's a step beyond qualifying. You're managing expectations is how we would technically call it.
Yeah.
So we're saying not only just the question of, look, what's it going to take when this deal's done for you to say, you know what, Matt, you did a great job, right? Beyond that, it's proposing the scenario, right? And learning each other's communication style, sitting down just like this and having that difficult conversation up front. So if a bomb goes off or you have to put out a fire, as they say, we say, look, we talked about this, right?
Yeah.
Because, and here's why I really do love that question. Trust is such a fleeting thing when you're in the professional world.
For sure.
Where it's easy to say, oh, I got you. I'm going to take care of it, right? But if someone doesn't know you that well and their business is riding on it, it's 10 times out of 10, you want to be able to say, look, we talked about if this would happen. It's a shame that it did. Here's what we can do about it. And you can skip over that phase because you took care of it up front of the questioning, right? Or the skepticism of, well, is this the right spot for me? Yeah. Or, maybe it isn't the right time. Because you guys know what it's like when you're growing a business, these decisions, there's a lot of money involved.
Yeah.
Right? And who am I? And I always say this. Yes, I'm technically in sales, right? But it's different in that I'm not trying to convince someone to buy or sell a product.
Yep.
Let's say client A has $3 million in a fund. I'm not going to convince or manipulate them how to spend that. The only thing I'm selling is to work with me to do it, right?
Yeah.
So our conversation is, what do you need, right? How do you want to get there? And let's unpack it from there. So by the time we're actually taking the list of opportunities I send them and going to look at them in person, we already know that the only way this ends is with a solution in hand. However we get there is going to vary, and it can be bumpy, but that's where having that all taken care of up front is a game changer.
Yeah. And and that is the way we like to do business. I think that's so important, is to manage those expectations and set that relationship. But, the other side of that is if I'm a new business owner or a new commercial realtor or I'm young in the space, how do I deal with the fact that if I'm doing that and I'm trying to play the long game, I'm going to have to take some losses on the short game? And how do you deal with that emotional up and down? Like what was like that for you? And we still deal with it today, and I'm sure you do too, that emotional up and down of, hey, it's like, I feel like I set the relationship up right and they just said, no, I went with somebody else, or not today. Like, how do you deal with that, that back and forth, and how did you deal with it from the beginning, and, how's it changed?
The reality side of it.
Yeah, right. Yeah, because it all sounds good. I'll just build relationships and they'll like me. Or sometimes people just, they won't, right? Or they go with the salesy person. It happens, right?
Absolutely. And especially to someone that starts in their early 20s in a business that's generally 40s, 50s, 60s even. It's a lot of very established professionals' second career because they're coming into it with their network base. And the 100% commission doesn't faze them, right? So that's a very important question because, again, coming in, being commission-based, no salary or bonuses, I'm signing up for that, but I got to eat, right? Metaphorically.
Yeah.
So
and literally.
Sometimes, right? Sometimes.
Yes.
We try to limit that at first.
Yeah, right.
No, but in all seriousness, I mention that because it speaks to your question of, it's natural to fall into the pit of coming off too salesy, and you lose that authenticity because you get desperate, right? So when I'm managing that at first and foremost, I would always say if someone were looking to get into this career, it doesn't matter if it takes 1 month or 6 months, make sure you have the right fit. And I'll keep saying that because that's when you get into those situations where you trust, your mentorship, and you trust that process. Have to have a Sixers reference in here, right?
Yeah, right, yeah.
But it is wise words, right? So yeah, there were times when seemingly, right, when you're doing your reflection, it's like, well, I did everything by the book. I did everything right. They had every chance to say that there was something wrong, or I could have done something better, but maybe it's an existing relationship that comes back. Regardless of the reason, it's part of the business. They say the cost of doing business, right? That's our version of the cost of doing business, is we risk spending a lot of time to ultimately get no return.
For sure.
And things out of control do happen. So fortunately, I was just, you're not in a position to be selective up front. So I was spreading those seeds as much as I could. And before I kind of learned to manage the act and the art of managing expectations up front, it was difficult, right?
Yeah.
It was difficult. And the only thing that anyone that's been there would say is you just keep going. It sounds cliche.
Yeah.
But you can't sit back and look at your CRM, right, or your pipeline and say, well, I got all of these, so I'll be okay. You have to have you ever heard of Jeb Blount?
No,
So
I haven't.
he's sales mentoring guru. He has a podcast as well.
Oh, cool.
And he has a few books, but he has these rules, right? And there's one, and I'm going to botch the name of it, so I won't even say it. But it's basically like a filtration system where it tells you on average, right? There's a formula, and you cycle out how many deals. Like, so no matter what happens with these, here's how much you need to be producing or putting into that pipeline to stay afloat. So for me, my big thing was finding that balance, because it's easy to get, and you guys know me, when I'm in, I go all in.
Right.
Almost to a fault.
Yeah.
It's one of the biggest things I've had to learn, where overcommitment, it sounds great, but when you're putting so much of your energy, time, and resources into that, other things may start to slip. So for me, it was just good old-fashioned discipline, making sure that I'm not, what are they, counting the chickens before they hatch out of the egg.
Yeah.
That was the big part of it for me. So as long as I knew that I was, again, trusting that process, making sure that I wasn't skipping the basics, or I wasn't putting all my eggs in one basket. I wasn't putting everything I have into one or two specific big deals.
Yeah.
It allowed me, at least mentally, to have that peace of mind, right? And stay in that routine. So it was such a learn as you go process. And I know it's different for everyone, but I'd say, for anyone in the business, myself, or anything that's involved in a high commission-based type industry, is never, when you're training and when you're coming onto this, as you advance, it's okay to acknowledge it, but never give yourself that satisfaction. Because if that's what you're looking for, you're in the wrong business.
Right, like thinking I made it, I can coast, I'm good.
Correct.
Yeah, because it is hard up front. I mean, it's great, I think, for someone to hear that, to say, wow, here's a 7-figure realtor. They're doing what I want to do in a few years. And you're saying, yeah, even for me, there was moments I said, oh my gosh, I have to talk to my mentor and say, dude, like, what the hell is going on? I got no money coming in. Yeah, that's a tough thing to deal with. Did you ever, were there moments you said, I'm not sure I can do it? Or did you always know, maybe you could do it? Like, where were you, mentally at some of those points?
Yeah, no, that's something where it goes back to, I was so overly ambitious before I got into it. And I said, I need to find what I actually want to do long term. So going into this, I knew I was signing up for a long-term career. So it helped with that part of it, where I never had doubt in the sense of, is this for me or is this not for me?
Interesting.
What it really was instead was having those recurring thoughts in the middle of a deal, right? And being able to say, okay, because sometimes when you focus too much on what the stakes are, right? If it's a client and there's a lot of money, not even just that would go into your pocket, right? Because we don't get paid unless the deal gets done.
Yeah.
But when you're considering the amount of time and the amount that companies have invested into their next move, sometimes it's easy to get caught up and say, well, I need to make sure that this process is flawless.
Yeah.
Right?
Definitely.
And so, again, for me, over time, it still happens, right? I mean, I'm in year I'm going into year 5, which is that kind of make or break point.
Mm-hmm.
And I've been fortunate thus far. But, when those conversations happen, it goes back to more life advice than anything, right? And having that support system. So outside of just the mentoring and the company that you're with and your team. But again, when it's a lifestyle, your family and your friends and what you do socially, all of that stuff adds up and plays a part. So for me, I didn't have to worry about sacrifices as much as integration, if that makes sense.
Great point.
Definitely does.
Yeah, I mean, and that's I know you, and I wonder, do you feel like you've done a better job as you've gotten, just further along in this endeavor in general of getting off that perfectionist thought process? Like, do you still, it sounds like you said that's still an issue that you deal with, because, I don't have it as much. Steve definitely has it, but even for us as a company, we've had to, make those decisions that sometimes things aren't perfect. And,
right.
and you deal with enough big companies, just like you have, you realize they're not perfect all the time. Plenty of them are like, oh yeah, no, we just messed it up. And you're like, what? They're like, yeah, no one's here. I don't know. And you're like, oh, okay, whatever. So, is that, do you consciously think about that? That just kind of happen, or
I had to start consciously thinking about it.
Yeah.
Because that's a very well worded way of putting it. Because it's easy to get caught up in the results of what they're going to be and the perfection.
Yeah.
And it's hard to learn to live with the results, right? So it's just as simple as, okay, you focused on everything that you can control. I'd say deals that I have had that have fallen through, it's always been for something out of control, whether it's myself or the client or both.
Yep.
So that's not enjoyable to realize that. It's not enjoyable to be like, oh, great, I just spent 6 months and then, a technicality happened, or the zoning hearing that what they needed for their use didn't get approved, for example. That's difficult. So again, yes, it gets much better as time goes on, because now it's crazy, and you guys definitely experience this as well. You feel like you've seen it all.
Oh yeah.
And then it's the next thing and the next thing. So you can't always just bank on learning from your mistakes. Sometimes you have to. I think it's a skill. I call it. This is going to sound a little too cliche, but the art of discernment. I would say if I was interviewing for a company, I would. First off, I'd have to master it myself, but I would test that in potential employees, because it's grouped in with intuition, but having that ability to act in the moment when there's, intense, important decisions to make where the consequences could be very dire, and continuing. Do you see what I mean? It's like if you're dribbling a basketball, right? Yep. It's the basics, and it should be second thought, but you're only as good until there's a better defender, right?
Yep.
So the more you continue to go on with that, I think it's a part of that self-reflection I mentioned. But when you consider the actual part where you're discerning between, all right, we're going to go with option A, we're going to go with option B, that incorporates into everyday life too. And if you practice that with small decisions, you're only going to have more confidence in yourself. And clearly you guys know I'm obsessed with basketball, so I'm plugging it in as much as I can.
Yeah.
But both Kobe, rest in peace, and Michael Jordan always said that they were never nervous to take the game-winning shot or to make that decision for them to take it.
Yep.
Because they've done it so many times.
Yeah, the preparation of it, right.
And so it's not just the preparation of it in itself, of shooting and knowing you can make it. It's the decision in the split second, right?
The situational awareness. It's like, typically the shot would go here, but I'm double teamed and I know someone's going to be open type of deal.
Yeah, that's a perfect way to wrap it up. So, yes, to bring it back to the initial question, over time, it's almost relieving sometimes because it gets better.
Yep.
But that was a huge challenge, because you're not always going to confide in your support system. You're not always going to have that luxury. And the more you can test yourself and improve on that act, right, that skill, that art of discernment, again, in business and in life, things are always going to go smoother. But to your point, you also have to live with the results when it doesn't. And again, I think it's acquired over time. You start to realize that compass, right, that intuition, you're only going to end up, same thing with time and experience. As it goes, you're only going to get better.
Yeah, and you kind of get used to the like, hey, I know I'm gonna lose some of it, and there's gonna be
Right.
moments where I have losses, so I expect it. And it's like, all right, cool, no worries. Like I can check that out because I mean, I know for me personally, on a personal basis, things that happened in 2018, 2019 when there were issues, I took them home. Like I slept with them. Like
yeah.
I went to the bathroom thinking about the problems that were going on at work, and
Yeah.
and now I still think about the issues in general, but it's more like you said, it's a lot more altruistic, and I discern, okay, just because there was an issue today doesn't mean that there's an issue in general, and that actually that allows me to step back and take it more, all of it
That's a
in,
great point.
Yeah, because
That's
it's
such a good point.
yeah,
because
yeah,
the way I look at it with that is when you're in your head, right, and the stakes are high, it's easy to also not be able to make a decision based on what's happened in the past. But then again, I always have to remind myself, well, that already happened, right? Because I had that same issue too. If I had to talk about struggles, right, I've been very blessed and fortunate, and thankfully hard work is paying off so far, but we're just getting started in the grand scheme of things. I definitely, because I mentioned it's a lifestyle for me.
Marathon,
right?
not a sprint.
And it's not just a conversation for another time. It's not just real estate that is my passion. It all blends together. And with that, it was very difficult, even on the drive home. And it's not just about being stressed and balancing that, just still having those thoughts and situations linger. I don't know how many times I've had to say it to myself, but it's already happened. So the only thing you can control, it sounds obvious, but the only thing you control is how you react to it, and you get better over time.
Yeah.
Again, what I mean by it sounds obvious is it's easy to say that, but to practice that is
Totally
a whole
different.
other ballgame.
Yeah,
Sure.
But to get peace of mind and to sleep at night when you realize, all right, I'm not only going to make this right, but here's what I'm going to do about it, because no matter how disastrous or how stressful it was, that will never change. It's rooted in history. It's done. You cannot go backwards. You can only go forwards. It's amazing to me how easy it is, how natural it is to forget that sometimes. So yeah, you have to beat that in your brain.
For sure. Definitely, man. Awesome. Well, you have any questions for us or Steve and me about anything?
How much have you guys revealed to the audience thus far about not just with the podcast, but your plans, right? Because I'm excited to hear more about the franchising, right? Knowing me, right? And we have some work to do. But, just as an opportunity to let the whole audience know, the game plan, right? Because when I say we're just getting started, we've done a lot, but in the grand scheme of things, now is when the fun begins, right?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, to give you an idea, our goal is to, in 10 years, to have 150 franchise units and be pretty much sold out in the United States, and all those franchises be doing about $1.5 to $2 million average in revenue. And really, our rooted goal is to have is to really develop great local business owners. Local business owners that really dominate, because what we think we have is really kind of this good way of approaching home service in general. And once we get to that point, roughly 10 years from now, our goal is to start with dominating moving and junk removal, in the country, in the franchise space, and then use that experience, like we said, to purchase other businesses and grow in the home service in general. So that's really like the long-term vision of what we see here. And we think we really have like a good culture already set kind of in making that a reality. Yeah, that's our goal.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
I from the outside looking in, I agree. Any thoughts on that, Steve? Because I think you guys are a great team in your perspectives and how you work together.
For sure. I mean, I think just in general, because you asked like how much do we share, I think it's very important in general to speak about your goals, especially when they're large. Because if you keep them inside, sometimes you can start to talk to yourself about how they're unrealistic.
Yep.
And the fact that between Dylan and myself talking a lot and then doing this podcast and speaking about this with other individuals, it helps it be more real.
Love that.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, just in terms of specifically to like what the goal is, for us, or for me specifically, the way I look at it is to really kind of revolutionize how a home service can be systematized. Because while they all have their nuances, just like food has its own nuances, the home service industry has its own. Moving and junk removal is just one of many home services, but we've even seen, just by talking through some processes, how applicable our systems could be to other industries. And we even talk, even though we aren't even in any other home service industry, we're already brainstorming about certain aspects of like, oh, if we did landscaping, this, or if we had a painting aspect of it, we could do this, and this. So I think the other part of goal setting and vocalizing your goals is you start to think about certain achievements before they're even on your radar, so that when we do get to that point, we've already brainstormed through 100 different options. Now it's more so just execution time. So even though we're not anywhere close to starting painting you or landscaping you, having those discussions early in the process when we know it's just lofty, it helps when you do get to that point in time when it is relevant, that you can just hit the ground running and do something quick.
Well, especially because, even 2016, we were like, man, one day we're going to get our own truck. And we're kind of like, yeah, sure, whatever,
Right.
buddy. And then to have days where we've had 10 trucks on the road and 3 different locations total, 2 other franchisees out, and being like, oh, we're in the office, and we couldn't even imagine owning our own truck 5 years ago. And I think, putting it out there, which I don't think we always did such a great job of, because we had a fear of
Absolutely.
of putting it out to the world, even internally, even with our employees, which we really have done a better job of doing, letting them know too, like, hey, here's our plan, here's where we're going. Everyone, even if you're, just it's your first day, this is the plan for moving you and junk you. Even if you're only going to be here for a few months for the summer to pick some furniture up, like, here's where we're going. And even if you're going to be a small part of it, you'd be surprised how many people get on board with when they see a vision and they want to jump on the train, even if it's only for a little bit of time, So yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah, and a lot of people, why they don't vocalize their goals or why they keep them relatively small, obviously is because of fear of failing.
Yeah.
And I saw this soundbite or this quote from Musk, and they're like, how do you put a 10-year goal into a 6-month time frame? And he's like, simple. You're probably going to fail, but you'll be a hell of a lot further in 6 months with that as the goal than if you only had a 6-month goal that you put a 6-month time frame on. So, I think it's just a total, how you, like you said, it's a lifestyle. Like how you treat everything, it pays dividends when you start to expand on what you think is what should be, and then just start having fun with it. Because when you have fun and you start, that's when the synapses start going crazy, and you start, like you said, it makes it enjoyable. It makes it more of a lifestyle than just like.
Well, and once you approach that fear, which for us, I wouldn't say we were terrified of it, but at least for me personally, I was afraid to put it out there. Like, man, this is a big goal. Do people want to know? Do the employees really care? And you start to get the right ones in place, and like our operations manager, he every day he's always telling us, I know where we're going, and I can't wait to be along for the ride. Like, you know what I mean? And he's he's not working on the franchising side, but he sees, like, he takes that vision and he internalizes it in everything that he does, and it really it reverberates across the organization, and hopefully across the time, right?
Yeah.
Well, I'll say this. Wow. That's what it's all about.
Yeah. Yep.
What you guys just did. I mean, how motivating is that? Just hearing yourselves talk and put that out there. And I'll say this too. You guys, and I love that mindset, right, of that not being satisfied or not sitting back complacent, right, and just approaching it. And you even put the word fear in there, right, and you're conquering that. And then you realize, well, why did we even think that getting a truck in the beginning was a big deal in the first place?
Literally.
Right?
Literally.
And you just start to multiply that as you go on. And I think with you guys, I'd say you're further along than most. And I mean that as the biggest compliment I can.
Appreciate it.
In that it may seem that way, or it may feel like that, but to see what you guys have done and then to hear that, I have no reason to believe or any doubts. And for those listening, that everything you just said, one way or another, will be accomplished. And I think what separates you guys, it's easy to be, the hardest worker. Well, not easy, but to be the hardest workers or personalized service and adding little nuances. Mm-hmm. But for you, you're not selfishly minded or just doing this to say, all right, let's cash out, right? You have a dream and a reach beyond that, and you're helping others get to theirs, right? And I hear you talk about it with your employees, right? You're creating a culture. So that's why when you diversify the different type of services or products you may offer, I can't wait to see how that happens. And we joked earlier about having guests come back on. I'll put it on record right now. I don't know if it'll be 2 years, 3 years, 5 years. I can't wait to point back to this exact moment.
Right, yeah.
And hear the next thing, the next bigger picture goal that you guys have materialized. And we say, wow, remember how exciting that was in the moment, you know? And I'll also say this too. I mean, I don't think our business is done together. And I'm not just talking about from a Muju and a commercial real estate perspective, right? I mean, hey, you guys are franchising. And when I say it's a lifestyle, I want to be in the position of the people that I'm working on behalf of. Mm-hmm. So what better way to do it than to do that work, right? It starts out as grunt work, right? And then you become a trusted advisor, and then you become doing day-to-day brokerage work.
Yeah.
But a lot of my clients, they could be a developer, an investor, right? Yeah. And when I see that process, I'm starting to fall in love with it. But that's what matters to me, like community development, like making the place better than it was when I first came. Mm-hmm. Something as simple as that. I mean, again, this is a much deeper topic to dive into.
For sure.
But the point is, I think it all ties together if you allow it.
For sure.
It doesn't need to be mutually exclusive. It doesn't need to be, well, I'll catch up with, Steve and Dylan when we have time. It's the collaboration starts to come together. If you recall, part of why we were at that networking event and part of our conversations during getting you this space was about getting like minds together in the same room. And just the energy I could feel off you guys as you were putting that out there. And, you not only have the track record and the skills to accomplish it, but it's tangible, right? And they're things that, again, they're going to involve others, and you're inspiring other people along the way. So that's a long-winded way of me saying congratulations on the recent success and the ongoing success, but also thank you. And I think we need more of this, right? Whether it inspires someone else to get their own variation of a podcast out there and bring that culture that we see dominating the audio and video airways, whatever you want to call it nowadays, bringing that here, right? Because we have those masterminding sessions. We have those good networking opportunities. Mm-hmm. And I think Chester County as a hub of that, I mean, it's an amazing area in general.
For sure.
But, let's keep looking at those next steps.
Yeah.
So,
well,
again,
I think you got to enjoy the journey too. Like it's fun, like to hear you talk about the process, and I think when you really enjoy it too and you love like the game in general, like the whole game of it is fun. Like for us, to give you an example, we met with a different junk removal owner and we meet him and every time we've met him a couple times, we're like, man, that guy, we feel like we're like, man, we're chasing after him in a good way, right? Like, and
how
he's
long's he been doing it?
About the same time. Yeah,
really?
About the same time.
Yeah.
He's awesome. He's a rock star,
Love
man.
that.
Yeah,
Yep.
and there's ways where we think that hopefully we influenced him.
Sure.
Yeah. And he's a superstar, man. And I hope we can beat him, but in a way where he still wins too. And that's what makes it fun, right? Is you run into that person like, man, like okay, man, like that. It kind of motivates you in a way that's fun. You enjoy the whole journey of it, right? To see the process. So yeah, that's a good point.
Amazing. I do have one more question too.
Yeah, of course.
Because we talked about sharing this on social media.
Yeah.
Right? For those that maybe are in my network that aren't aware of you yet, again, they see the brand, but what would you recommend as potential clients or potential buyers of the next franchise? Best way to get in touch with you, or what would your advice be to them to say, oh, that's interesting, I want to find out more and get involved? Is it a direct outreach thing or...
Yeah, sure. You just go to our website, www.movingyou.com. Go to franchise opportunities. And what you'll see, too, if somebody is looking, is between this podcast and just all of our blog, our franchise opportunity blog, there's a whole lot of info because, when it comes to franchising especially, you're starting your own business. You're becoming a part of ours. That's great. Right. But you are still starting your own business. You are an entrepreneur. So you want to have a ton of info available to you, and that's what we try to provide. We try to informationally kind of like equip anyone that even before they request some, a contact with us, they can really get that on their own time too, and I think that's a big deal. So yeah, go to our website, www.movingyou.com, go to franchise opportunities and really explore long before, even if you think this is cool and the podcast is great, really look into it, because especially franchising, we're kind of like you said originally, we're trying to align, it all comes back, right? We're really trying to align our values, right, and our vision. Like you have to be on board with that. If you want to just start a moving and junk removal company and it's pretty easy and we're gonna be okay and we're gonna be a part of the market, that's totally fine. That's great.
Right.
You're not on our train. Our
Yes.
train is we want to win, and in the way we want to, not just any way, any means necessary.
Correct.
But if you're not aligned with that, maybe don't select us. There's other places to go. So yeah, go to our website and get a feel for us. Like you said, and see to my values and my vision really align with this, and be honest with yourself. And the answer is yes. Cool.
Yeah,
love it.
I was gonna say, the whole reason why we put this podcast out is for people to get to know us. A relation or a franchise is a business relationship. It's not a buy and fly. You don't make one transaction and then never see the person again. We're talking 5-10 years of we're in business together. So like Dylan said, really making sure that not only you align with our values, but you just kind of like us as people, because like you're gonna be hearing a lot of us, so you might as well, can you see yourself working with us? And I think that is so much more important than anything else, because no matter what the means are, if you're with someone who you align with and you feel comfortable doing work with, the rest of it is just the medium to get there.
See, that fascinates me, because we're in, well, not totally separate, but we're in pretty different
For sure.
lines of work.
Yeah.
Sure. Because again, like, you've taken care of some of my clients, right? And you technically are moving in different places, but I am commercial, right? And for the most part, our day-to-days don't overlap.
Yeah.
But exactly what you both just explained so well is the same thing when it comes to my process of, not just an idealistic point of view on the type of people you want to work with, but the how to go about it.
For sure.
I love that. And I don't know if that's a generational thing, because it seems like it's tweaked from each to the next.
Yep.
And, here we are at the start of something exciting. Every day there's a new tool and resource. Social media is about to become its own universe, metaverse.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
That's going to sound hilarious to play back even in like 6 months.
For
Because
sure.
it'll just be so established.
Yeah.
There's people spending more than they would with me in the real world online already.
Oh yeah.
So again, not to dive into that, I'm just putting it out there how there's so much excitement, there's so much to do, and I look forward to it. And again, hopefully, this is just
Siri wants to hop in.
Siri has a comment. Apparently something went wrong, and to try again. So in the interest of trying again, I can't wait for our collaboration to continue, and I just encourage anyone who's hearing this to get in touch, or think about. I have to plug a little sales pitch for you guys, right? Think about your life. We're all in that age where people are getting married, they're moving, they're in apartments, they're going to the house, right? And think about how getting in touch with them can help, right? Because I can assure you, from having sent my clients there and just knowing these two fine gentlemen themselves, you'll be taken care of it in good hands, right? That's the easy part. But for the other things that Dylan and Steve mentioned too, right, with potentially getting into the franchise or on the podcast, let's make it happen. Let's keep this energy going. You guys are pumping out one a week, right?
Yeah, at least. Yeah.
That's amazing.
Lots of stuff. Yeah. And if someone wants to, talk to you, Matt, what should they do?
Sure. We can have our information posted with this, right?
Sure.
Oh, it'll be there. Don't
Perfect.
worry.
Yeah. But the best way is, the good old website, SwopeLees.com, if you want to learn more about our inventory. But I'll make sure my LinkedIn info's there too, with my direct contact. To be honest, I'm curious, quick question for you guys too, but for me, I live and die on this thing.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
Right? You even got Siri telling me that something went wrong. She's tired. you know?
Yeah.
But no, so for me, cell phone, email, but we're so mobile that we have to kind of operate from the mobile.
Yeah, for sure.
Is that how it is for you guys?
Yeah,
too? Like,
definitely.
you prefer that?
Mm-hmm.
Definitely.
Because there's a lot of people I won't name names, but there's a lot of people that they will do anything they can to avoid getting their cell phone out, even if it's with their most prized client.
I know. Yeah. It's weird. Yeah.
And you would think it's like a no-brainer, but people have different comfort levels.
For sure.
And for me, I guess, you put yourself in those shoes. If I was working with someone that does what I do, I'd want that same type of dynamic.
Absolutely.
So
Awesome, man.
Cool.
Well, until next time, we'll be talking to you again soon. That's for sure. You'll be on again.
it'll be a fun reflection to look back on, and also again see how we're going to level up more. So
for sure.
I got to thank you guys for the opportunity. It's been a pleasure, and just the way you guys figured this out, you didn't make any excuses.
Definitely,
you got the equipment on Amazon. You got the phones lined up. Everything, and
awesome.
the quality's great. So very well done. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for coming on, man.
Thanks, Matt.
Absolutely.
Until next time.